Hello everyone! For my author's journal, I decided to create something different from a traditional book. Instead, I create a lost and found box. When I first read the assignment, I started thinking about what I wanted to create. At first, I thought about making something related to all the activities we had done during the course. However, I realized that the assignment was not about showing everything I had made. It was about creating something new that represents my experience. I didn't want my project to show only my artworks. I wanted it to show what I had learned while creating them and how this course changed the way I understand creativity. That is why I chose this format. A lost and found box is a place where people go to find things they have lost. I thought it was the perfect idea because during this course I felt that I had lost some fears and habits, but I had also found new ways of thinking, observing, and creating. The creative process started with one simple question. If everything I learned became an object, what would it be? Instead of thinking about materials or artistic techniques, I started thinking about ideas and feelings. Little by little, I chose different everyday objects that could represent those changes. I wanted them to be simple because I wanted people to focus on their meaning, not on the objects themselves. To make everything easier to understand, I create a small label for each object. Every label has a keyword and a short sentence explaining what the object represents. The first group of objects represents the things I lost during the course. The ruler represents perfectionism. At the beginning of the course, I wanted every activity to be perfect. Later, I understood that creativity cannot be measured and that making mistakes is also part of learning. The log represents the limits I place on myself. Sometimes I thought I wasn't creative enough before I had even started. In the end, I realized that those limits only exist in my own mind. The balloon represents unrealistic expectations. At first, I expected every experiment to end with a perfect result. Later, I realized that not every experiment has to be perfect to be meaningful. Sometimes the process is even more important than the final artwork. The clock represents always being in a hurry. This course taught me that creativity needs time and that good ideas couldn't be rushed. Finally, the blank sheet of paper represents the fear of beginning. At first, a blank page felt scary. Now I see it as a new opportunity to create something different. The second group of objects represent everything I found during the course. The magnifying glass represents observation. I learned to pay attention to small details that I have never noticed before. It reminded me that creativity also starts by observing carefully. The feather represents freedom. As the course went on, I stopped trying to control every result and started enjoying the creative process much more. The light bulb represents ideas. I discovered that creativity doesn't suddenly appear, it grows through curiosity, experimenting, and practice. Finally, I include a letter inside an envelope because I want it to be the last thing people would discover. I think it brings the whole project together. Inside the letter, I also drew a butterfly because it represents transformation. Just like a butterfly changes little by little, I feel that I have also changed during this course. It reminds me that learning takes time and that personal growth doesn't happen overnight. For me, the butterfly symbolizes everything I discover about myself while creating, experimenting, and learning. That is why I wanted it to be the final image of my project. Looking back, I think this project represents my experience much better than simply showing all the artworks I created during the course. Of course, I learned different artistic techniques, but the most important thing I learned was that creativity is not about being perfect. It is about observing, experimenting, accepting mistakes, and enjoying the process. For me, this lost and found box is much more than a collection of objects. It is a collection of everything I lost, everything I found, and everything I learned through this course.